Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, the show where everything and anything can and will be sorted. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Brice. We also have Galen Crawley York with us, and we're in the senior year. We're in
Final chapter, baby.
We made it, senior year, y'all. Woo!
All right, so
we're sorting. We're now on our part 3 of sorting the English literature we read in high school.
Yes,
wow.
We have 2 Ravenclaws and a Hufflepuff sorting,
and this is when I stopped doing my required reading.
Right.
My senior year, I was applying to and auditioning for a bunch of college theater programs all over the country.
God.
I was traveling a lot, and I didn't do my reading.
Yeah, you're barely thinking about anything except for like what you have to prep for those auditions.
Yeah. I had. I think I auditioned for 9 different college programs. And SparkNotes became my best friend. I spent a lot of time,
lover at this
reading
point.
SparkNotes, but also
On
a
again,
lot of
off
time
again
taking
relationship.
quizzes on SparkNotes.com.
Oh, that's. I didn't know that you could do quizzes. But
Oh, there were so many quizzes. I believe they're still a big part of it, but
OkCupid
many
was
a quiz.
originally a SparkNotes spin-off quiz website.
what?
I'm pretty sure this is it because
That's
I was
right.
on.
I think you're right. Yeah.
They had either the same owner or he was like trying to reincorporate that quiz part, and that's why there are so many questions and survey things to fill out. If you use the dating website OkCupid, you fill out
That's
questions
right.
to learn your compatibility.
Yeah, I do remember that.
That's a wild bit of trivia that I wasn't expecting to
Early
learn.
internet nerd, baby, I got it all.
So what is our first book to cover as far as senior year?
Well, this is a classic that I did not and still have not read. I think I read probably like a quarter of this book.
All right, well, we'll wait for our fans to get real angry about whatever this will be.
And it is Pride and Prejudice.
Okay, yeah, Jane Austen.
And I have not read
Jane
it.
Austen. I would sit down and literally, my senior year, every time I would sit down to read this book, I was so tired just from everything I was doing. I would read like a half a page and just instantaneously fall asleep. I just couldn't do it.
And I think it might be the form.
It is dense.
Yeah.
It is dense. And Jane Austen is very funny. Like, this is certainly this is not a dark or difficult read in that, like, it's not emotionally difficult.
Oh,
the
no.
language
Yeah,
is pretty dense.
all like about like family life during like the Regency era of
Yeah.
England. There's not a whole lot of like deep conflict.
So walk me through the plot, because I only know that there is a character named Mr. Darcy in this.
Who is hot, played by Colin Firth.
He is beautiful. Also, Matthew McFadden, who plays him in the Keira Knightley movie, is an incredible actor, and he's on Succession right now on HBO, which is he's my favorite part. He's incredible. What a chameleon. Essentially Pride and Prejudice is, there are 5 Bennett sisters. There's a lot of Bennett sisters. There's 5 Bennett sisters. Lizzie is our heroine, and Lizzie's mom is obsessed with getting all her daughters married, and she meets the new neighbors who have moved into town, the Bingleys. She desperately wants her oldest daughter, Jane, to marry Mr. Bingley, so she convinces Bingley to throw a ball. Bingley's good friend, Mr. Darcy, comes to the ball. All the Bennets are there, and the Bennets live in the country. And these fancy Bingleys and fancy Darcys, they're city people. So they're in the country, and it's essentially like if this party that they threw was like a hoedown. They are just like kind of not prepared for these country bumpkins, specifically Darcy. And Lizzie overhears him being like, none of the girls here are pretty. I'm not into this. I don't want to be here. And somebody's like, well, what about the Bennett sisters, especially Lizzie? And he's like, no way. She is not hot enough for me. And Lizzie is like, well, fuck this guy forever. He's a douchebag. But over the course of the novel, she realizes that Darcy is actually just so shy. He's just a very shy boy. And he actually has a very kind heart and is a wonderful person, unlike Mr. Wickham, who Lizzie thinks she likes, and he's very charming. But it turns out that Mr. Wickham is an asshole, and he elopes with Lizzie's 14-year-old sister. Gross.
Disgusting.
But Mr. Darcy saves the family from ruin secretly. The only reason that Lizzie even finds out about it is because dumb old 14-year-old Kitty spills the beans, at which point Lizzie is like, oh my gosh, you saved my family and you didn't even want any credit for it. I do love you.
And that's the end of our tale?
And like, that's the end of the tale. Yeah. And throughout the rest of the book, so many fucking people get married. So many people get married. So many people want to get married, and then their plans get thwarted. It is, and I will say, I am talking down about how much I have not read this book. I have not sat down and read the entire book. I have now, at this point, I have seen most of the film adaptations. And also I was in the play, Miss Bennet, Christmas at Pemberley, which is being done all over the country. So I really, really should have sat down and read it all over again, but I didn't.
Well, the thing that kind of strikes me as you were describing the plot, and also because I had the perhaps misconception that Pride and Prejudice was a drama of sorts.
Oh no!
Oh, there is drama,
but
it's like
there is drama, but it is a comedy.
The thing that I feel I'm taking away more than anything is like the plot you described sounds like a Shakespearean comedy. In the fact that everybody winds up getting married and like there's miscommunications and
I mean she's still English, and so there's so much sensibility and
sense also.
Sense and sensibility. There's so much tied into like the importance of those things, and also like that, you know, ties to like the country and marriage, especially, you know, fertility and stuff like that. All those themes are still super, super popular at the time. This was written like the 1813s, I want to say. And another thing, if you don't have a good frame of reference for Pride and Prejudice as like an American millennial type, which I think is our main demographic, have you seen the movie Clueless?
Yes.
Okay, well that is a very good, if a bit loose adaptation of another Austen play, Emma. So if you you can also kind of see how in Clueless there was the main character of Cher Horowitz, but a lot of it had to do with her relationship to everyone else's relationships.
Right. It is. Austen is really wonderful at sending up class. Yeah. And so much of this book is about how class blinds people, but also how jealousy and prejudice comes into play.
And it reminds you that it's all construction.
yeah, it's all constructed. And, you know, the Bennets' marriage is so important in this world because all of these people are aristocrats, many of whom don't actually have any money anymore. The Bennets don't actually have any money. And a huge running, I don't want to say running joke, but it is like a main thing in the plot is that if Mr. Bennet dies before the other girls are married, they're going to lose the estate. And even once they get married, they'll lose the estate. It's just about they have to secure their own futures with these marriages. But it's very funny. And as with any Regency novel or novel of this time, the plot hinges so heavily on letters. Which is why the parody book, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, is so funny, is because there are so many things that happen in this book where, you know, somebody has to deliver a letter, and so a messenger has to go out on a horse with a letter, and the horse gets lost, or the letter falls in the mud. And in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, it's just that these messengers are getting attacked and killed by zombies, so the messages don't reach their intended. And
I love the modern day adaptation that we've made of that. Is like text messages are very important in films now, especially for like things of this sort of trope, like misunderstanding a text tone has replaced the like missing a call sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. Or like typing your message and forgetting to hit send.
Yeah.
Oh, I die if somebody like leaves me on red after it looks like they'd been writing for a long time. I'm like,
Oh my God.
I'm
yeah.
too nosy.
I'm horrible. I'm the queen of writing an email and thinking I've hit send, but I actually just sent it to my drafts folder.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's terrible.
How do we feel as far as sorting goes?
I feel like this is pretty Hufflepuffy.
I'm feeling that as well.
I am also have been leaning towards Hufflepuff.
Yeah. Because it's satire and like you said, it's going after the ruling class, but it's doing it kind of with kid gloves on.
Yeah.
Since she was a member of the ruling class, and so she wanted to take shots, but still, she had a lot of
but we are also at the end of the day, while it does send up the times, it also, like, these characters are living within the confines of this world. Lizzie and Darcy do get married at the end. And I also think, too, that, I mean, just overall, it is literally a book about, like, learning to get to know people so that you overcome your first impression of them. And that's just so Hufflepuff.
Yeah, it's a very clean, just, can't we all, like, be happy and, like, come to know how we're all friends?
Yeah.
And end in a marriage and have some nice jam.
All right. I think that's a great way to sort that one. What do we have next?
Next up, now, okay, senior year I had a bit of trouble with because like I said, I didn't read any of these books, or the ones that I did read, I was so busy that I don't remember much about them.
That's fine. Prove I've ever read a book. I'll wait.
Did you guys read Heart of Darkness?
I read Heart of Darkness. Yes.
Is that a zombie book? What's going on?
No.
I don't remember anything about Heart of Darkness.
I can tell you about Heart of Darkness.
All right, lay it on us.
Heart of Darkness is the venturings of, I don't remember our main character's name, but he's going into the Congo to find Colonel Kurtz, I believe.
Yeah, his name is Charles Marlowe.
Marlowe.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's by Joseph Conrad.
Conrad,
Right?
The Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, so we're venturing deep into the heart of the Congo because Colonel Kurtz was there for reasons I don't recall. I believe he was a trader or something like trader with a D, not a T. And upon sort of arriving there, Colonel Kurtz has flipped the script a little bit and not like he's not responding to the calls because he's made a better life for himself within the confines of the jungle than what like civilization would have made for him back home. And
if this sounds familiar to movie nerds, this is what Coppola took inspiration
Apocalypse
for.
Now.
Apocalypse Now.
And that is literally the only thing I remember about this book is that it's what Apocalypse Now is based on. And we watched Apocalypse Now in class after reading this book. And this was one, I actually do think I read most of Heart of Darkness, but like really, I don't remember anything about it.
I do just know the overarching themes of the book was like, as this dude gets more into the heart of the jungle and, plays on those fears of what English people would have about the African continent at the time. And how like decivilized they all assumed the place to be. And therefore, like, what peril could this lead to our protagonist? It becomes more and more apparent that like it was just as dangerous for him back in London, and that London was really the people, like, although they all were all pristine and had a sense of propriety, were cutting each other's throats, left and right. And this guy's here saying like, no, actually, I have a much better life that I could be leading here. And just like, I don't know, it kind of feels like Matrixy in a way.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the largest quote to pull from this is the horror, which are Kurtz's final words as he dies. Because I think, if I recall correctly, upon, like, Marlowe reaches him and he's sick and, like, holed up. But he's like, there's nothing back for me there. Like, I've got a good situation. But, there's a great amount of discussion on what is the horror that he's discussing.
Yeah. Is it the war that's been raging, or is it society? Yeah.
It's up and open to interpretation. I recall the book being pretty like engrossing, while as like it was pretty descriptive, and I remember them like they're riding down the river and there's like shrouded in fog, and it felt like we were really going on a journey.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't describe it necessarily as a favorite in the reading process.
It's very hard and convoluted from what I remember trying to read it.
Mm-hmm.
I do know like there is a little bit of that, and it's also another one of those sad ones where you're just like having to look at the wounds of society. Like when he goes to the Kurtz's wife's house at the end, and she's like, "What were his last words?" And he was like, it was your name, darling. Of course, it was your name.
That's right.
Not the horror. I'm never going back to England. Definitely
it's all about cognitive dissonance, I think.
Because I'm now remembering more of it. Like Kurtz also like committed some pretty severe atrocities, if I'm not mistaken. Like
it's been a long time for me. Yeah.
Like he murdered some of the natives like around the area. Probably this again is like me recounting, but
and having somebody who's horrible pointing out that your entire civilization back home is even worse.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, I'll say it's kind of like Donald Trump is one of the worst people in the entire world who's ever lived, but he still has pointed out a lot of the corruption in the rest of our system.
Well, it's like to all the people who are chasing this idea of success, thinking that once I get this one thing, I will be happy, but you don't realize that the thing won't make you happy. Just you choosing to be happy will make you happy. And so like...
And trying to make other people happy will make you happy, and realizing how limited people are in their capability of realistically doing that for each other. Which
I don't necessarily know is the theme of the book, The Heart of Darkness.
And especially when it comes to sorting, I'm like really stumped with this one, because the themes of the book seem to point me. I feel like the book is facing a like Gryffindor or Hufflepuff zone, in that it's like, yo, we got to take a look at what we're doing to our world. This is horrible.
Yeah.
But it feels like a Slytherin-y book because it is so darkness in the heart. But I'm not sure that Slytherin is actually where this book lives.
I'm of the mind, whenever this kind of happens, you listed 3, it's actually the 4th.
Yeah.
I will let you know, like, just like glancing at the Wikipedia for this, apparently there was like a critic named Harold Bloom who pointed out that this is one of the most analyzed texts in literature because of how the ambiguity with which the text itself lends to the reader. And so I think maybe
is why I was feeling like it's a Ravenclaw.
Yeah, it really, like, honestly, it just comes down to, like, I think he's just throwing these truths out that are just pretty self-evident, and then being like, all right, well, what does this mean for you?
He's just created a bog for us to wade through, and if we happen to grab onto something, that's great.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I think this is like a chaotic, neutral Ravenclaw.
Yes. Yeah, into that.
What do we got next, Galen?
Well, another one that I had on the list, and I feel like maybe this one, we touched on so many similar themes when we were talking about dystopia with Fahrenheit 451. This is not a book that I read in high school. I actually only read this for the first time a couple of years ago, but I think most people encountered this in high school, so 1984.
That book is double plus good in my book.
Ooh, look at that.
I don't know, because I learned a lesson from the book. I've never read one.
Ooh. If you were to read this book, it is about our hero. Is he a hero?
I mean, he's really just a bloke. Like, like, because this is one where he's not really, if I recall, he's not really actively fighting the system, but like he's trying to understand it while sort of rebelling a little bit.
Coming down on him, and we're just witnessing it.
So the first, the first maybe third of the book is him living under this regime and not knowing who he can trust. Like Fahrenheit 451, there are screens everywhere, but in this one, the screens watch you back. You have to monitor your face at all times to make sure that your facial expressions aren't giving away your inner life. You have to be careful about what you read. You can't read anything, but you have to be careful about what you write down. You have to be careful about what you think.
Yeah,
thought
because we have
crime
the thought,
and
we have a
double
literal
speak.
thought police
The
force living in this authoritarian regime.
Big Brother's always watching.
And then the like middle third of the book is him meeting a woman whose name escapes me at the moment, but him meeting a woman and sort of encountering the resistance to the government. Julia, thank you. And then the last third of the book is he and Julia and the rest of the co-conspirators are discovered, and he is tortured. I was very surprised when I read this book at how much of it centers around him being tortured. And apparently, to the Broadway play that went up last year was like focused a lot on the torture sequences.
Oh, that sounds awesome to sit through.
Yeah, it was supposed to be just incredibly intense. And then the very end of the book is he has been tortured to the point where he is a believer in Big Brother. You find out that the entire resistance plot that he and Julia got swept up into was essentially it was a plant. And he and Julia were truly trying to resist, but they ended up, it was a larger government conspiracy to catch them. And because they were caught by Big Brother, because he was caught and tortured, he now has a respect and a love for Big Brother. And the book ends with him taking part in the rituals that he hated earlier, and now he is performing these rituals with gusto and zeal because he believes.
I can't relate to any of this in this book. It speaks to nothing in my life right now.
Yeah, it's this book is so fucking scary.
I think this one
incredible.
Should be read in tandem, and I read around this time Aldous Huxley's Brave New World
because that was what I read.
Sophomore year. Yeah, because they both talk about like dystopic authoritarian civilizations where things are simultaneously more advanced but also way more repressive for the people. But Orwell approaches it from like the torture and suppression technique of immobilizing people versus Huxley in his book. They did all by kind of placating people and giving them everything they want, including the idea of elitism and a caste system, to the point that they are too what's the
lackadaisical,
or they don't think to
passive.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't think to be upset because they have TV and sex and everything they want given to them.
Right. Another pairing that I was thinking about, because I forgot completely about the torture component of 1984, is if you were to read 1984 along with Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah,
that would be a fun pairing in the sense of one is like an innocent who like chooses to rebel, whereas the other one is like rebellious, and in both cases they become subservient to the systems that are like built around it. And there's a large portion of torture, and there's a lot of like wordsmithery. Because if you've ever read, like 1984 has double speak, I believe is what the
yeah.
So it's like double plus good or double ungood, and a bunch of other phrases. And then with A Clockwork Orange, I mean that thing,
it has a glossary in the back to help you understand.
But it's so cool because as you read it, you are referring to the glossary less and less, and you suddenly are just like in the world.
No, it's such even just on that, it's like a great examination of what code switching is like, and like how quickly you can adapt to language.
I really liked that book. I read that after high school, but it was great.
I was very glad that I read this book when I did. It also was extremely hard because I started it like probably 2 or 3 months before the 2016 presidential election, and then had to literally put the book down for like 6 months. I just couldn't take it.
Not have a panic attack. Yeah.
But this book really, like, I mean, the entire environment of the book is like, this is exactly what Voldemort wanted. Like, literally, it's exactly what he wanted, is to be able to control everybody at all times. People, spies who are constantly working for him and against each other. I mean, this is his fever dream. It's exactly what he wanted, but with no magic. So, like, on the surface, I am just, and I don't know, maybe we will initially put it somewhere else. I'm just so tempted to throw this right into Slytherin because it feels like tonally, that's just where the book
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and like even on its, I always also try to think of like the intent of the author, if you can read too much into it, and it was just all around the time that they were developing nuclear technology, and there was a real visceral fear,
right,
of like, if we give enough control to a government to be able to suppress us through sheer will, what does that mean about our, is that a future even worth going to?
Right.
And I think that is a very, it's a very Slytherin form of government. So
yeah.
What was that, Galen?
I was going to say, I've got one more, one more book. Up till now, I have avoided bringing in one particular author. This was a writer that I was lucky enough at my school that we did at least one work by this author every year, but some years we did more than one. And the one that we did my senior year was Othello.
Okay, we're going to get into some Shakespeare.
Get some Shakespeare up in here.
Galen, if someone hasn't seen or read Othello, what is that about?
The Othello is the titular character. He is a Moor, which is a specific ethnic group of the time. But in modern times, this is often represented with him being an outsider of some kind. Usually, Othello is played by a black man, and everyone around him is white. In whatever context it's being done, it's extremely important that Othello is an outsider because he has come into this world that he was not initially a part of, but is an extremely well-respected general. His men love him. He is very successful, and he has recently married Desdemona, who is a beautiful, charming woman with a lot of status. And I forget exactly what her father's job is, but her father is very important. And so it's a really big deal that Othello marries her. And especially when you place this in Shakespeare's time, we're talking about a marriage, a mixed race marriage, which surely in terms of 1500s, 1600s England was really rare. But Othello has a subordinate, Iago, who hates him. And it's because there was a rumor that Othello had slept with Iago's wife. It wasn't fucking true. That shit ain't true. But
Iago is frail.
Iago, whether or not he thinks it was true, I think he does think it's true, but whether or not he thinks it's true, mostly he's just pissed the rumor exists in the first place. And so Iago decides that he is going to convince Othello that Desdemona is having an affair. So he starts planting seeds of doubt in Othello's mind. And Iago presents himself to Othello and to everybody else in the world of the play as Othello's right-hand man. He, for all appearances, is Othello's best friend and closest confidant. But then anytime somebody else leaves the stage, Othello turns to the audience and is like, these idiots, I am playing them. I'm going to convince him that Desdemona is cheating on him with, what's his name? Michael something.
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't know. I should know this.
But in the end, Iago's plan works, and Othello suffocates his wife with a pillow. Suffocates Desdemona with a pillow.
It It's also an interesting thing just with Iago. I cannot recall for the life of me what program I was listening to on this, but they were breaking down like truly malicious characters and like what is evil and how do you present evil.
Yeah.
And they were discussing Shakespeare plays and how in every Shakespeare play, with Othello being the exception, the villain is presented some moment of reprieve.
Yes.
Yeah, even Richard III, who's like the closest I can think.
Some justification as to like, why is it this is what you're doing?
Yes.
And in the case of Iago, there is no moment of sympathy that is like allowed.
It's one of Shakespeare's like least nuanced written characters.
He just is a bad dude.
Yeah.
And they're like, why did you do this? And it's just like, because fuck you. Like,
because I didn't like him. Because he was hot enough that other people thought my wife might sleep with him.
And we can wax academically on why Shakespeare would choose to do this when we know he's capable of writing more sophisticated villains. Like I said, with the case of Richard III, he goes very close to cartoonish, but then because it was historical play, it was a lot easier to pin down and find actual sympathy for the character at the end. In the case of this, it might just be that there were popular plays at the time that had similar villains in it and similar themes and storylines, and Shakespeare just was like, fuck it.
It's interesting.
It's just
like
a really interesting choice to make him a pure embodiment of evil as opposed to a more nuanced.
Yeah,
I think
even Macbeth.
But I suppose there is nuance just in the fact that he's the best friend, quote unquote, who is actually conniving.
And I think it could have just been a trend, and Shakespeare was even a shrewder businessman or group of people or woman or whoever you think Shakespeare was, more clever and even in business than in the writing itself. They knew what would sell, and I think that's my suspicion.
Iago is such an interesting character because coming at it from the perspective of an actor, anytime you're playing a villain, 99.999% of the time, your way in is, okay, so this person clearly doesn't believe they're evil.
Right.
What is their actual motivation? And even Macbeth, who is not a good guy and never... you don't for a second forget like, oh, well, I mean, whatever. I still want McBee to win. He murdered those children, but whatever.
He's like a Walter White antihero, yeah.
Yeah, but you'll see Macbeth's, you see how he literally just like hears this prophecy and it like kind of drives him insane. So at the beginning of the play, he's a totally normal guy and you see him lose his marbles, but not Iago. So in a lot of ways, Iago's lack of complexity is what makes him complex.
Right.
Because he is one of the few characters that is like, I'm doing this to be mean. I'm doing this because I want to ruin this guy's life. And
we don't want to accept that it's that simple, so we agonize over motivation.
And if I remember correctly, too, at the end, and it's been a minute since I read Othello, so I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, at the end, everybody figures out pretty quickly what Iago had to do with it, and he's just kind of like, yup.
Yeah. That's like the most maddening part, is that like he's just like, yeah, that happened. And I don't feel bad about it.
Oh, am I going to go to jail for this? I don't care.
Right.
It is more important to him to destroy Othello than it is for him to even retain the life that he had, which is just wild.
He had a one-track mind. He was going to do this one thing. He did it. Things are good for him.
Yeah.
Which is like
totally fine.
If only we could live such Iago-ish lives, obviously not with such malicious intent, but just to be able to be like, I want to do this one thing. I did this one thing. Great. Everything's wonderful.
All right. If the purge ever happens, I got to get far away from Michael.
Yeah. So, like, Othello, certainly Iago is a Slytherin, Mr. Single-minded focus on only the things that he cares about and nothing else. But I almost feel like this play might be a Ravenclaw, as it is the classic overthinker's text.
Oh, for sure.
Somebody like leans and whispers in your ear and is like, why is she talking to him like that? And you're like, but they're just talking. They're just friends. Nothing's wrong at all. And he's like,
the way that we process this work now, it's like, I agree with that angle too, because also there's the race dynamic now too that's more pronounced than it would have been at the time. Like at the time, racism was just like a casual, easy tool. It was the thing
that was there.
Yeah, you would see Othello come out, instantly know, I don't have to relate to that character. It's not going to be that character that I'm necessarily going to understand the easiest, even though Iago is less well written because he is that outsider character, and we still do this to this day with the way that we write characters. If you ever notice, a lot of the times villains are people of color or someone from another country.
And Othello is the good guy. Othello is the protagonist, but is completely corrupted by the forces of somebody like whispering in their ear, wait a minute, why does that dude have your wife's handkerchief? And of course, it can't be something as simple as, well, she dropped it somewhere and so he picked it up. No, it has to be a sign of something worse. And so to me, I don't know, to my like analytical, anxiety brain, that feels very Ravenclaw.
Oh, yeah, because it's all about breakdowns of communication and being able to connect to other people, which
maybe it's a play about the Mercury retrograde.
I mean, the one thing that I question is if maybe it's a Gryffindor, but I think that's more like the arc of Othello is like this cathartic, bombastic act of passion. That I don't necessarily think sits with the rest of the text. But so, yeah, I'll agree on Ravenclaw.
Hell yeah. And with that, did we sort your high school English literature experience?
We did.
Oh, my goodness. All right. What a ride.
Well, Galen, thank you again so much for coming on this multiple parter.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
If you want to be following Galen Crawley York, you can follow them at Galen Crawley, both on Twitter and Instagram, correct?
Yes, indeed.
And if you want to be following myself or Reed, you can follow me at Belated Media, Reed at That Dang Dingus. You can follow us on Twitter and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You're all great.
It'd be really cute if anyone thinks to do it once this drops. Write to me what you would put in my yearbook if you wrote it. What would you put in mine, Michael?
Just hags.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Okay,
yeah,
but
hags.
that would. You better not be calling me one.
No.
I'm gonna do
summer.
I'm the clown who came to town to write in your yearbook upside down. That's
I'm
me.
that bitch who takes up half the page with my signature.
Yes.
And you're like, no, that was very prominent real estate in the yearbook. I did that a lot because I couldn't afford one, so I just ruined other people's.
That's an Iago ass move right there.
No motivation, baby. No, it is. I'm poor.